Hi guys, so today I will show you a killer game played between Bobby Fischer and Mikhail Tal, which was played in Beograd, also called Belgrade, in 1959. And this game was suggested by our subscriber Luin Min Myat. And guys, this game is really awesome. It's full of sacrifices, crazy tactics, and unbelievable ideas. I promise you, if you love attacking chess, this game is going to make your day. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump straight into this masterpiece. Okay, so now A6 by Tal, and this is known as Sicilian defense Nasdorf variation. And after that, Fischer develops this bishop to c4, e6 by Tal, and now you can see the move b5 is coming. So that's why Fischer brings his bishop to b3. Okay, so since this knight is attacked, so that's why knight to a4. And you can see now this pawn is undefended, so that's why knight takes e4. And after that, Fischer simply castled. Okay, so now g6 by Tal, preparing for bishop to g7 so that he can target this knight. But now Fischer strikes with f5, trying to open up the king side. And let's suppose if e takes f5, that will be a slight inaccuracy because previously the pawn on e6 was guarding the d5 square, but after capturing the f5 pawn, there is no cover over this d5 square. So that's why now white can go for bishop to d5. And since this rook is attacked, so the only square is rook to a7. And guys, now I just want you all to pause the video and try to find what will you play as of white. Okay, so let me help you to find the best move for white. Just look at the geometry of black pieces. I mean, these two rooks are on the dark squares and black can only defend one at a time. So if we somehow brings our queen to this d4 square, then we can possibly do this. And yes, now I think you got the move, which is to sacrifice this knight by knight takes f5. And if you capture this knight, then simply go into d4. And you can see black has to lose one of his rooks. So that's why, let's suppose if black decides to not capture this knight and instead he decides to defend one of his rook. So let's suppose this rook goes to this g8 square. Now comes knight to h6, attacking this rook as well as creating excess pressure over this f7 pawn supported by this bishop as well as this rook. And if bishop takes h6, bishop take h6, and you can see this knight is attacked and this queen will go to the f3 square, which puts too much pressure over the f7 pawn. And by this, you can see this game will be over for black. And let me go back to this move, which is knight takes f5. Here, if you decide to defend the a7 rook by, let's suppose, on c7, now again the same move comes, which is knight to h6. And here's the thing. Let's suppose if black decides to push f5, which blocks the root of this which blocks the root of this rook. So how can white can continue this attack? And guys, in this position, white can actually sacrifice his knight by knight takes f5. This is because after bishop takes f5, now comes this another god level move, rook takes f5. And basically we are doing this so that we can deflect this g pawn so that white can bring this queen into the action by queen to h5 check, king to d7, knight to b6 check, and the only move is king to e7, and finally queen to f7 will be a mate. Wow, that's really amazing. And Tal basically knew this very well. So that's why after the move f5, he captured with the correct pawn, which is this g takes f5. And guys, to open up the king side in this position, Bobby Fischer sacrificed his knight by knight takes f5. And his idea is simple. He wants to open up the position because after, let's suppose, e takes f5, now comes queen to d5, threatening mate in one as well as attacking this rook. And you can only defend one at a time, which you obviously will defend this mate by bishop to e6 and finally queen takes a8. So that's why after knight takes f5, here Tal goes for rook to g8. And guys, that's the beauty of Mikhail Tal. Because even chess engine are not recommending this move, they are recommending to just capture this knight, which I already showed you that which this is not good. Basically, by this by this move rook to g8, Tal takes complete control over this G file. But guys, as we all know, Bobby is not a joke. He responded with the killer move bishop to d5. He sacrificed this bishop and now you can see he is targeting this rook. And let's suppose if you captured this bishop, simply queen takes d5 and if you let me go back, yeah, if you defend this rook on a7, simply queen takes e4 check, bishop to e6, bishop to e3 attacking this rook, rook to e7, and obviously you cannot go there due to the threat of this, so that's why we go to this d7 square, and after that rook at a goes to e1, and now you can see white is attacking black rook and at the same time activating his pieces. And in the next move, knight to b6 is coming, and you can see this is all over for black. So that's why after bishop to d5, here Tal goes for rook to a7. And since you can see white can anytime give a check, so that's why rook to e7. And after that, basically, yeah, let me show you something that, yeah, so before that, yeah, rook to e7, bishop takes c8, queen takes c8. But definitely one thing which comes in your mind that after rook to e7, why Fischer didn't capture on h7? This is because let's suppose he captured on h7. Now you can see white is a pawn up, but it also opens the h file, which automatically becomes problematic for white in the future because black rook can anytime go to this h file. Okay, so in the actual game, after queen takes c8, here Fischer made a mistake by bishop to f4, attacking this d6 pawn. But why this move is a mistake? This is because of the move queen to c6 played by Tal, threatening mate in one as well as attacking this knight. So that's why instead of bishop to f4, here the move c3 is recommended, which opens the diagonal of this queen and it also defends this knight. And guys, after all of this, you can see white is now attacking this bishop as well as this rook. And by all of this, you can see Tal is now in a huge trouble. But as we all know, Tal is not a normal human. He is known as the magician of chess. And in this position, he finds the only defensive move because let's suppose if he defends this rook on d7 by rook to d7, that will be a huge mistake because of rook at a goes to e1 check, king to d8, queen to f6 check, king to c8, rook to e8 check, king to b7, rook takes b8 check, king to a7, and finally queen to f2 checkmate. So that's why one thing is clear that black cannot defend this rook. So that's why after analyzing all of this, here Tal finds the only defensive move, which is queen to c6. And guys, this move is so god level that it literally blows the audience and the commentator minds. This move is played mainly to neutralize all of the white attacking ideas. This is because, let's suppose if white captured this rook by uh, bishop takes e7, and guys, either you capture this rook or either you capture this queen. In both the cases, the position looks kind of similar. So that's why I will only showing you the what will happen if white captures this rook. Okay, so after white captures this rook, now black will firstly capture this queen. I mean, black will exchange the queens, and finally bishop takes e7. And you can see now this position is completely equal because black has two minor pieces against a rook, whereas black has 4 pawns to counter the white 5 pawns. Okay, so in the actual game, after rook to c6, yes, let me go back, which is, yeah, after this move queen to c6, here Fischer goes for the move which is bishop takes b8. He decides to capture this knight, but after that, simply queen to b6 check, king to h1, and Tal, uh, Tal captures this bishop. And guys, now queen to f6 was recommended for white so that he can target this f7 pawn, but instead Fischer made a mistake with the rook takes f7. Basically, he wants to open the position of black king, but that's a mistake because after king takes f7, now queen to e6 check, and note one thing, that if you go to e8 square, then simply queen takes g8 will be a checkmate. And obviously we all know that Tal will not fall for these cheap tricks, so that's why simply king to f8, queen takes d7, and after the dust settles, you can see Tal is now a bishop up. And now since this bishop is attacked, so that's why queen to d6, asking for queen exchange, which obviously white cannot. So that's why queen to b7, preparing for this check. And now Tal goes for rook to g6, so that if white gives any check, he gives any checks, then black can easily defend this check by placing this rook to f6 square. Okay, so now bishop to d8, adding a defense to this a5 pawn. And after that, here Fischer simply exchanges the pawn, and he goes for g3, creating an escaping square for this king. Here Tal gives a check from c6 square, but simply rook to e4. Queen takes c4, rook takes c4, and since this pawn is attacked, so to defend this, rook to b6. And after that, king to g2, and now bishop to f6 might be the better option so that he can target this pawn, but instead Tal brings his king further to f6. Okay, so after that, king to e5, and now you can see Tal centralized his king, and now this king is an attacking piece in the endgame. King to e3, bishop to g5 check, king to e2, king to d5, targeting this rook. So that's why. And here Tal goes for bishop to e5, a clever move opening the f6 square for this rook so that it can infiltrate towards the white position. Okay, so here bishop to a1, a good move by Tal, and you can see in the next move, black is going to push this pawn further. And now a4, and in this position, the final move by Tal is b2. And here Bobby Fischer resigned. This is because after king takes rook, now comes b1 equal to queen, a discovered check by this bishop. And after king to c4, simply black will give a check, and yeah, that's all. What an amazing game by Tal. Let me know in the comments which game you want me to analyze, and don't forget to hype this video. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.